What is good, everybody, man? Appreciate y'all tuning into the Blue Bloods as we recap a wild week 4 of FCS HBCU football. As always, here on the Coach's Corner, joined by my guy, Coach Frederick over at Alcorn State. Coach Fred, man, how we feeling?
Man, I've been better, but you know, it's Monday. On to the next. On to the next.
Man, it was a tough loss, man. I know it was extremely competitive game, man. PV Alcorn State. I mean, listen, that division's still wide open. I'm excited to see. I know you guys got a big game this upcoming weekend. I want to say traveling to Alabama State. PV gets to go face Grambling in what's shaping up to be an extremely interesting SWAC West matchup. But man, Coach, week 4 wild. I mean, what we had. I want to say like 6 or 7 top 25 matchups, 2 top 10 matchups, had plenty of upsets to talk about. But, Coach, I want to start with some storylines for the week. I want to throw this one out at you, Coach, because we always talk about people making preseason predictions, going with the defending champions and all this. Coach, 8 different conference champions from last year have now lost their first conference game of this season. Sac State, co-champs in the Big Sky, losing to Idaho this weekend. Gardner-Webb losing to Tennessee State. New Hampshire, co-CAA champs, losing to Delaware this weekend. Yale losing to Cornell. St. Francis losing to Sacred Heart. Sanford losing to Western Carolina. We talked about that game 2 weeks ago. Southeastern Louisiana losing to Houston Christian. We'll talk about that one in a little bit. And then Jackson State losing to FAMU in week 1. Coach, man, I mean, it's been a tough year to be a defending champion.
Everybody's gunning for you coming in there, and everybody feels like they've revamped their roster to match up with you when you are those guys. And a lot of those number 2 teams weren't far off from the teams that won the championship, and it only takes a small margin of error for it to happen. And then I'll go back to what we talked about in the beginning. A lot of this I really feel like these games are coming down to the timing rule. A lot of these teams are escaping. Now, some are just completely wiping folks out, but a lot of teams are escaping by shortening the game. And that's what you need to be. If you're not quite that team and you need just a little edge, man, you jump out early on somebody and that timing rule comes in. I think is really huge, and teams are starting to play to that now. Now it's about possessions.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. And I think the interesting thing is, you mentioned the difference between some of those teams and some of the teams that finished second, third aren't that big. I mean, you have the Idahos that were at the top of the Big Sky. Delaware was competitive. Sacred Heart, FAMU, but you look at like Houston Christian, Western Carolina, Cornell, Tennessee State. I mean, these are teams that really weren't in the race for the conference at the end of the season. So I think you're seeing this across all college football, Coach. We see it at the Power 5 level. I mean, look at the parity when the Pac-12
right
to the SEC and everything at the FCS right now. And that's going to lead me to my second topic. I mean, the parity is so different now. I mean, we had this question in the offseason, Coach. When you look after 4 weeks of the season, when you look at I want to separate into 2, FCS and HBCU, because we know the HBCUs play for the Celebration Bowl. FCS is going to the playoffs. On each one, how many realistic championship contenders do you see for the national championship and the Celebration Bowl? Has it changed since the offseason?
That's tricky. I don't think it's really changed. I think there's a few teams that have added their name, to that list legitimately. I think the biggest factor, man, is that people went out and they're starting now to really understand how to navigate this transfer portal, this transfer rule. I think people are now navigating that in a positive way to what they already had. At first, even though the transfer portal has been around, I think people were just doing it to do it. Now, if you look, everybody's being really strategic. Everybody's getting really good players, and players are starting to realize that I can go play at Alcorn State rather than sit 5 years, so to speak, at Bluebloods University. And I can go play at a high level and play for a championship and still be in front of NFL scouts and all that kind of stuff. And I think we're now starting to see that with a lot of these programs.
Yeah, I mean, for the Celebration Bowl, just because the West is so wide open, I still feel like there's a lot of room, and also the
So
media.
you're saying there's a chance?
Yeah, so there's definitely a chance in the West. I think the East, with FAMU beating Alabama State, it's going to be very hard for FAMU not to go to the Celebration Bowl. So I think everybody under FAMU right now are long shots. I mean, because when I look at FAMU's schedule, I don't see two losses. Like Southern hasn't looked good. That's a tough road matchup, but I give FAMU the edge. PV's a tough one, but they come to Bragg where they got the second longest home winning streak. It's going to be homecoming. I don't know, man. I mean, I know they didn't look overly dominant against Alabama State. I just don't see a team that's built to beat FAMU right now on the schedule. And so it's like, are they going to lose twice? I just don't see it.
No, I don't see that one either. I think the best chance for folks for that happening was this past weekend, and it came close. Watching that game, the ups and downs. I don't think Coach Simmons is going to let that happen again. I don't think his team will let that happen again. I think that was an eye opener for them, and I think like you said, the ones that they really need is in Tallahassee, which they've proven they don't really lose there a lot, and they haven't lost there in a long time.
No, I mean, like I said, second longest home. Let's see, they got the 17 games now, Coach. It's only behind Montana State, who's at 22 consecutive home wins, which is just insane. I will say the active winning streaks has kind of been decreased, man. Like there's not a lot of active like longevity winning streaks because of those FBS games, but South Dakota State's at 17 now, leading the country, and the second place team is 4. That's William and Mary with 4 wins. So, I mean, South Dakota State's got a huge lead on that. But, Coach, man, any storylines from this weekend that stuck out to you?
I think, and we'll preview it, but the one that I really like that sticks out to me was the Idaho Sac State game. And like I said, we'll preview it, so I won't really get into it. But, when we get into it, it's got some crazy numbers. One guy did his thing, one team, and for our neck of the woods, I think it was the walk-off fashion in which we lost at home. That storyline. But as far as the major storyline from FCS, I got to go with the Idaho over Sac State. But I think I did call that.
Oh yeah, we both picked it. So I did calculate our pick'em score. So I didn't use any of mine from the website. Only games that we picked on the show in terms of our actual pick'em. Coach, we're tied right now. Yeah, you've made up your early deficit. Man, that week 0 killed you. You'd be killing me if it weren't for that week 0.
Yeah.
Hey, and I got to give you a shout out. The Delaware upset pick was a big one. We both picked the Eastern Washington upset this weekend. So, man, you've been killing that. This week, Coach, you went 5-0 on your official picks.
Man.
Balling out. Hey, that I got to give you props, man. But we had the same record week 2 and 3. We didn't have any picks differing that week, so I think we got to kind of go our separate ways on with some of these picks to kind of get some separation. But Coach, one of my big storylines was I kind of mentioned it earlier. Southeastern Louisiana finally gets back to host a home game, and they lose to Houston Christian, first-year head coach. This is a team that has not won anything ever, I feel like, at the FCS level. They lose 34-19. I mean, it's not even close, Coach. I mean,
they crushed them.
HCU came in there and honestly looked like the better team. And I have to give Braxton Harris, the new head coach there, some props. He brought in a lot of young talent. They have some of the best freshmen in the country. I mean, I think when you look at some of these top recruiting classes, they haven't really produced on the field. Some of these guys he brought in just the one offseason he's had. I mean, I'm impressed. Listen, Colby Suits had a hell of a game, 282, 3 touchdowns, a rushing touchdown as well. And Darrell Evans at running back, man, 173, averaging 8 yards per carry. They dominated the line of scrimmage, had 4 sacks defensively. Rodney Dansby and those guys on defense are balling out. Coach, HCU right now is sitting and looking with McNeese struggling, a big road win over Southeastern Louisiana. The Southland's in kind of a down year behind Incarnate Word. man, HCU could have a potential to finish top 3 in the Southland, which is something that no one saw coming this preseason.
Nobody's seen it coming, and no one's seen this game outcome coming. I mean, they put up over 500 yards. They were balanced in every area as far as rushing the ball, throwing the ball. Didn't hurt themselves in the penalty game or the turnover game. It was on the road to put this up, man. I think is kind of it's really impressive, like you said, because no one's seen this coming. No one's seen this coming, and to do it in that fashion, unbelievable.
Shifting over to some of the HBCU games, man, we kind of preview some of the HBCU games of the week. Obviously, the big one, FAMU, Alabama State, man. But there was one that I think me and you both said it wasn't even going to be worth watching. It wasn't going to be close, and it was that Jackson Bethune game, man. And there was. It was interestingly close, but I will say, man, it's kind of like a slash storyline slash recap of this game. Coach, we talked about it. The SWAC has to fix an official problem because it's just getting outrageous. You know, in your game, there was some field goal extra point issues in terms of determining whether it was good or not. And the referee is giving Bethune-Cookman, I want to say 4 or 5 second half timeouts, allowing them to stop the clock with over a minute left on 4th down. And if it wasn't for an illegal substitution and Jackson's punter being out, so who knows what the field position would have been, they get the ball in really good field position with a chance to win the game because they're only down by 6. Man, you got to be better than that. There's no reason for a Division I program to struggle knowing how many timeouts a team has in a crucial moment, clutch moment like that.
It's like it's not basketball, so I don't know if folks understand that the timeouts don't carry over. And normally they all have cards. I would be interested in hearing the backstory as to how this got mixed up, because you get 3.5. So that's just I don't know. I don't know what to say about that one, man. That's 2 extra ones that you didn't even plan for, you know.
I mean, because Jackson, I mean, at the end of the day, whether they make it or not, is kind of fighting for a playoff bid. If they win out and go 9-2, they're going to be in that conversation.
Yes.
If that goes the other way, and they win because the team got 1 or 2 more timeouts than they deserve.
Oh man,
and the conference missing out on a potential at-large bid, or man, Coach, what happens? Let me throw this at you. What happens if the unimaginable happens? If FAMU loses twice, still wins the tiebreaker because Jackson took an L because the refs couldn't figure out the timeouts. I mean, there's so many scenarios. I know it ended up going the right way, but the conference has to figure that out in terms of getting that corrected. Because Coach, you could have an altering scenario if for a conference championship race at the time if that goes the wrong way.
Yeah, it's just not that game. It has implications on a whole bunch of other things outside of just that game. And like you just hit on, it's a situation where not Jackson, but Jackson and the conference now goes to the playoffs. Put in a different light. And I'm just going to say this, and I'll leave it alone. Had that happened and it went the other way, Bethune would still be in Jackson. Those refs would still be in Jackson. I think that stadium will be surrounded until they got a chance to redo that thing. But it's definitely something that Dr. McQuillan and the powers to be have to look into. And it's just got to be a better situation all the way around.
And then D-Lob made a good point. The refs missed an obvious catch by Bethune-Cookman and called it incomplete. I mean, the calls were bad on Saturday night in Jackson. But I mean, I will say, listen, Irv Mulligan is that guy, man. I know.
Yeah, listen, he went crazy.
174 touchdown, averaged 8 yards per carry. I will say, because I had someone reach out. I won't say who, and they kind of asked me my thoughts on this game, and I was like, I feel like the problem is everyone wants that kind of like air raid style Liberty offense because you've got the Maurice Harris in there. That's not the strength of this Jackson team. You have to embrace being a run first. Man, we got Irv Mulligan, Moultrie. We got the true freshman, Aubrey's little brother, Miller. Man, run the football. Like, your offensive line excels in run blocking. Play to your strengths, because when I look at this game, Coach, on paper, Their receiving core is talented. I give them that. But nobody's emerged as a go-to playmaker outside of Rico Powers. Rico had another big game, 7 for 60, but there was a big drop touchdown pass by Isaiah Spencer. There were multiple times where the wide receivers weren't getting open in time, and it was causing Jason Brown to have to escape the pocket and make plays with his legs. They don't have a proven guy outside of Rico. So that's my biggest concern is your wide receiving core isn't playing as deep as it might be on paper. And it's putting Jason Brown in the offensive line in an unwinnable scenario because you can't block forever.
Well, and you've got to do, like you said, in that case, and tip my hat to them for understanding that and doing it. You've got to play to what your strengths are until you can get the extra coached up to the way you want it. Right now, if it's easier for you to turn around and hand it to that guy with the dreads flowing out the back of his helmet, and he's going to get you 6 yards every time he touches it, I mean, the smart coach turns around and hands it to him. You've got to go with what you have going at the moment and continue to work the other part. Now, if they get it all going at one time, it can be scary. But right now, they just have the one that they can really put their hat on, and they know that it's going to be a situation of where, hey, we're going to get positive out of this and go from there. Tip my hat to Coach Harris for doing that.
Yeah, and I got to give a shout out to Walter Simmons, man. Not even the starting quarterback this year. The starting quarterback hurt a few weeks ago. He comes out 172, a touchdown. I mean, he played really, really well. Amari Hill Robinson at cornerback, balling, had a big interception as Jackson was driving. So I just think Jackson, the biggest thing for them is they just got to find their identity. There's too many.
Roll with it.
Yeah, roll with like. I get what you want to do. Maybe you don't have the personnel. Coach, we talked about this when we broke down the coverages and the swag. You might want to run something, but if you don't have the guys to run it, you're going to end up hurting yourself in the long run. Play to your players' strengths, and you're not an air raid style team right now.
No, that's not you. By all means, that last ball game, November 18th, if that's what you want to do it. But, by all means, you have to. And right now, that's what makes them go well.
Yeah, and then my final thing, man, I just think they got to develop an edge rusher. I don't think they got that guy like a Niles Gaddy, a James Houston, a guy that can just go get, unless it's a blitz with Isaac Peppers, and unless it's those two defensive tackles wreaking havoc, they don't have a guy who can just dominate off the edge. And so I think that's the biggest thing for Jackson that I'm looking for. But, Coach, we had a huge game over in Tallahassee, man. We both predicted this one correctly. But, man, Alabama State making a QB change, making it interesting until a huge play, man. Isaiah Major's a dog at linebacker. 40-yard pick six to close it out, under 3 minutes left. Coach, what were your big takeaways from the Rattlers getting a huge win over Alabama State this weekend?
That they were able to turn the ball over and still come out with a victory, which, again, leads me to believe, that home field advantage wins out in that situation. But the major thing I think that they've got to take care of is that turnover situation, because you can't have that going down the stretch. The later you get in the season, the less room for error you have by way of turning it over. And then, hats off to State. They went in there and they battled. They went toe-to-toe with them and was right there to the end, like you said, to the crucial turnover. But at the end of the day, turnovers and time of possession, FAM won that. They lost the other one, but they were at home, and what that winning streak is, 17 or whatever it is, they prevail.
Listen, I mean, as good as Alabama State's defense is, FAMU, the one concern I have about FAMU is, man, not running the football consistently in the big games. I mean, I'm gonna give them a break this week, Coach, because this probably was one of the better run defenses they're gonna see this year. That front seven is legit for Alabama State, but you've got to try to establish the run because it takes so much pressure off of Musa. Now, Musa delivered a solid game, I thought. Didn't really turn the ball over through the air. Was pretty efficient. Was able to push the ball down the field. But, man, the defense won them this game. Isaiah Major, I mentioned the pick six. 12 tackles led the team. But that man, Gentle Hunt, is a problem in the middle.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, as a defensive tackle, 8 tackles, 3.5 for loss, and a forced fumble. That's next. If I can get that out of my 3-1 tech every week, I'm winning every game.
And they that guy in the middle, along with the other guy in the middle, anytime you hold a team rushing who makes an attempt at running the ball, you hold them under 20 yards rushing. I mean, you're doing something up the middle. Your defense is playing lights out up front, and hats off to them. Holding them under 15 yards. Actually, 14 yards rushing for Bama State. You're going to win a lot of ball games when you can cut a team off and make them one-dimensional the way that FAM made them one-dimensional.
I think it's safe to say this as we wrap this game up, Coach. There's a new quarterback in Montgomery. Listen, I want to give Eddie Robb this. I want to give him a shout out because some coaches make a quarterback change and are hesitant to trust that new guy to air the ball out on the road, top 25 program, hostile environment. He said, listen, man, this is your offense. We're going to let you air it out 41 times and just go out here and ball out. And he played well up until that pick six at the end that ultimately cost him the game. But I thought he played well. And then that man, listen, we've talked about him on the show. Keyshawn Johnson is an issue.
Guy.
Unguardable. I mean, 8 for 112 this week. I mean, he's a problem one-on-one. And I think I got to give Eddie Robb credit. We know what the defense is, but for them to trust the quarterback that much to throw it 41 times, shout out to E-Rob for handing the keys over when he made that quarterback change.
And sticking with it. I'm sure he had a lot of pressure going into that situation. Handing the keys over to that young kid and basically flipping the ball in the air and turning it back to him and say, hey, have at it. And, to trust him in that scenario with basically your season riding on the line to say, hey, man, put it in the air, bring us home. That speaks a lot to what happened during the bye week and the week leading up to that game.
Coach, the SoCon, we talked about this for a few weeks now. They have not. I mean, there's probably going to be a different conference champion for the 5th consecutive season. Yeah. Sanford collapses against Chattanooga, Coach, 47-24. I mean, listen, you gotta give them credit. They forced 2 big interceptions off of Michael Hires this weekend, and I mean, you kind of look at this conference now, Coach. We know Furman, what they are, top 10 team. We're about to jump into their game, a dominant performance against Mercer. But then you got Western Carolina hanging around, Coach. 683 offensive yards, 77 points against Charleston Southern, who just 2 weeks ago lost a 15-7 game against William & Mary.
But we've been talking about Coach Bell and his offenses leading up to this, and you just kept waiting because I think you said it last week. This is not the Coach Bell with all this run first stuff and all that. And I think this is who he wants to be. And I think the more his quarterback becomes comfortable in their situation, and like you said it a couple weeks ago, if they get just a little bit of defense and they are putting up close to 700 yards of total offense, I mean, they're going to be pretty tough to deal with as they get older. Remember that part about them. They're not an old ball club.
No, a lot of sophomores on that team. And, Coach, it kind of looks like we're headed to a Furman, Western Carolina matchup in 2 weeks from now where, man, that game, I'm probably going to try to get up there to that game. But when I look at Furman this weekend, Coach, it's still kind of more as great as they looked. I still don't understand what Mercer's doing offensively. Only 16 pass attempts. I mean, he was sacked 3 times. I get that. And Carter Peavy attempted 16 passes, but had 13 rushing attempts. And you got, again, 2 of the best wide receivers in the country. Eventually, you're going to have to let him air it out. I don't know if he's showing something during the week where Mercer isn't trusting him to air the football out. I don't know if it's something schematically they're seeing on film. But, man, Ty James, when given the chance, 483 and a touchdown this weekend. If the slogan of the week that should be posted in the locker room is in all doubt, just throw it to 13. If you're doubting yourself, find 13. That's it. That should be the game plan for Carter Peavy. And Coach, I feel like because they were so conservative, it just let Furman establish momentum, and they ended up running for 222 yards and 4 touchdowns and ran away with this game, which it was close early.
Yeah, and time possession that allowed them to win that ball, win that part of the ball game as well. But I'm kind of like you because I had really high hopes to see what these two in the receiver room would be able to do this year. With another year with a quarterback that they've had an opportunity to play with. I thought they would come out old Florida Gator style and just, fun and gun it, which has been anything but that. So I'm kind of like you as to just, maybe there's something that's not quite clicking during the week. So by the time you get to your game plan, close date, whether that's Thursday or whatever their day is to close it out, they're not liking it and they keep it as, vanilla from me to you outside looking in. But again, like you said, if you just put it anywhere close to that guy, you've got a 50-50 chance of having something good happen for you. So why not put that in the game plan? Third and whatever, get it close to him.
Coming into the season, Coach, I thought the SoCon had an opportunity to get a good bit of at-large bids. I'm looking now. It's looking real thin after you get past Furman and Western Carolina. Maybe if Chattanooga can win out, they bounce back from a week one loss in North Alabama, who's kind of looked really good. Coach, neither of us want our upset picks this week. We'll get into mine in a minute. But North Alabama competed well early. UT Martin pulls away late, but North Alabama's looked really respectable. So I'm not going to hold that against Chattanooga. But I think the SoCon, it might just be you might get that one auto bid and maybe 1 to 2 at large bids if Chattanooga just goes on a run here.
So you're thinking still getting two at large in there?
I think if I had to bet right now, I think you only get 1 at large. Furman or Western Carolina wins the conference, and then the loser of that game gets the at large bid.
Okay.
It's kind of where I am because I think Mercer's kind of played themselves out of it. Sanford's sitting at 1-3 now. And so they're going to have to bounce back in a big way. Chattanooga's 3-1 right now. They bounced back from that loss in North Alabama. I think if they could go on a run here, maybe pull an upset over Furman or Western, maybe you can get another at large bid. But I think you're just sitting at 2 bids total right now for the SoCon.
Champion in the championship game or loser. I'm with you.
That's kind of where I am right now. But Coach, shifting to the Big Sky, we had 2 big upsets. Me and you predicted one of them with Eastern Washington over UC Davis, and then we finally had the proof that Montana is not the Montana that we're used to seeing. But Coach, I want to start with EWU here. We both picked this one. What was your biggest takeaway from this huge win for Eastern Washington as they bounced back? I mean, they had a brutal out-of-conference schedule, and they get a big road win in their conference opener.
I'm trying to get to my game note. But yeah, we did pick that one. And I picked one other one that I thought was going to hit. But like you said, we didn't get a chance to come up victorious on that thing. But, for them to come in and be able to do that away from the red turf, I think was huge for them. But they did it running the football. They did it running the football to me. That's one of those things where when you find your identity, I think that's where you kind of hang your hat at. You can't have penalties on the road. They didn't have them. And they were able to come up with timely stops, timely stops. They've got to get better again in the third down situation. I think we talked about that once before. 4 for 15 on the road is going to hurt you at some point. But, you come back, you're able to run the ball, 38 rushing attempts, you go for over 100 yards. I think that's a recipe to win games on the road when you have just a little bit of defense.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the big takeaway for me is, like you said, the defense made key stops. You had the big pick 6 with Marlin, and it was just like every time UC Davis got something going, they would find a way to stop them. It was like that bend don't break approach. And also, I mean, let's just be honest. I don't want to take away from the win. Lan Larson being hurt really helped when he put up 255, a touchdown, and was averaging 12 yards per carry. His injury, I feel like, took a lot of the wind out of the sails of UC Davis. I don't say Eastern Washington doesn't win this game without that happening, but I will say it really does help when the best player is not available in the second half.
Yeah, when he goes out and then you're able to get away with come away with, like you said, 2 picks and, force a fumble in there, 3 turnovers, and then the best player's not playing in the second half. That helps you. but the timely stops, you can't put enough on that man. And then when you get an opportunity to seize the moment, because you have to seize that moment when he goes out. And they did. If you don't seize that moment, you may not get that opportunity coming back going forward the rest of the season. So it'd be interesting to see how they come back the rest of the year. But, on the road, you can't beat this kind of win.
Yeah, Visperus continues to develop. I think this was one of his more efficient games. He didn't have any touchdowns, but also protected the football, was efficient in terms of where completing the football, establishing that offensive consistency. Give him some credit. I still think he has a long way to go before we consider him, the next guy at Eastern Washington, because the bar is set really high, but he's taking all the right steps. He's still a young quarterback. And Coach, I'll say this was an important win for them, because now they're sitting at 2-2, and moving forward this weekend, they host Idaho, top 5 team in the country. They still got a game against Weber State, top 15 in the country, and they got a road matchup against Montana State over there in Bozeman late in the season.
And the Idaho game is at a good time.
Yeah, very.
You come off of this win and you catch them riding high 2 weeks in a row. Maybe there's a little letdown, allows you to stay in this thing late, and you get a chance to pull it off. So I think they catch Idaho at a good time.
Yeah, we'll definitely preview that game Thursday. I mean, that's going to be easily one of the games of the week, if not the game of the week. But Coach, real quick, a huge upset. We talked a little bit last week how I thought Montana was being a little bit overrated by the media. They were sitting at 3-0, but they didn't look super impressive in their D2 game against Ferris State. They didn't look very impressive against the non-Scholarly school in Butler week 1. They traveled down to NAU, a 28-14 loss against a winless Northern Arizona team coming into this one. Coach, what did you take away from the Grizzlies' collapse on the road this weekend?
As I'm trying to get to my notes, I just remember you saying that, hey, that record could be a little misleading. We'll have to see exactly where they are. And this is one of those tests. And now, going forward, I hate this iPad. I usually write my stuff out, but like I told you, my wife has my car. But anyway, does this take them out of the movement, man? Does this loss really hurt them in your eyes to the point that they can't rebound? Because you were saying all along that they still hadn't proved that they belong. So while I'm finding my notes, I toss it to you.
I would say it proves that they shouldn't be ranked, even though they are still ranked. They're 18th in the country right now, which, I mean, so the argument to this, Coach, was, I'll just throw this out here, is they were saying, okay, one voter said who had them, I want to say 24-25, would say, if FAMU traveled to Montana, would they win a road matchup?
No.
So he said, I can't put them above FAMU. Who else?
Well, I'm going to take that back. I'm going to say it depends on what time of year it is.
Agreed. Okay, so let's just say early season. I think, and I'll say this, I think they could. His argument was, if FAMU, UT Martin, Youngstown State, Jackson State, Rhode Island, Central Arkansas, all these teams that people are putting above Montana would played Montana, who would you favor to win? He said, if you would favor Montana to win that game, why should they be ranked below them?
They can't beat Western Carolina, I don't think.
And I will say this, I didn't like that he used if they traveled to play Montana in Montana. I'm like, what happens if Montana had to come to Bragg?
Yeah,
and play in Tallahassee? I mean, can we pick a neutral site if we're gonna do hypothetical? And I'll say this: here's my belief on that. If they played, I don't know who I would take right now, because Butler went up there, wasn't scared of the environment. FAMU just beat the number 4 team in the FCS by 21. I mean, so it's like, based on what I've seen on the field, I'm not saying FAMU would win. I'm just saying I don't know if it'd be a bloodbath that everyone's thinking as it would possibly in past years. And I also don't think rankings should be based on hypothetical matchups that have not and are not scheduled. Like, you can't just say, like, oh, in this, because my problem when people do that is, yes, you do need to try to rank the 25 best teams, but you can only use information that you have based on what's happened on the field this year. When you start using hypotheticals, coach, let's be honest. Listen, I was a psychology major. Your confirmation bias is just going to kick in, because if you already think Montana's the better team, doing hypotheticals like this with yourself,
you're going to always find a way.
You're always going to find a way to justify it. So I don't think you should use hypotheticals that have no based information to rank teams.
And I think up front, I've watched FAM, and I think up front that they can handle their own on both sides of the ball in the trenches. I think where it would come down to, in all honesty, is what time of year. If that was going up there, and the same thing if Montana was coming down to Florida. If they were coming down to Florida first game of the year, I'm doubling down on FAM, because, Tallahassee, summer heat, just like if FAM is going up there and we're talking about in November, well, I'm going to double down on Montana, in that situation. But if we're talking a head-up situation, perfect scenario, 75, cool breeze out of the southeast, I think FAM could handle their own. I don't think it'll be a situation where they would back down or anything like that, or the environment, because it gets big. It's a big environment down in Tallahassee every week as well. So I'm like you. I don't take that, as far as that goes, into consideration. It's just one of those things that I just think will never happen, man. The 96 Bulls will never play the 2000 whatever Warriors. So we could talk about it all we want, but unless it was a way to happen, I just don't think it would happen. But, for NAU to go in there and almost put up 400 yards on them, control the time of possession, I mean, they have some serious questions, I think, that they have to get answered before they get into the meat of their schedule as well.
Yeah, that's my thing. Is I didn't like that he used FAMU and NCCU specifically. It was like, because he referenced some of these voters referenced like ballots with 2 HBCUs in them. Mine has it. I got FAMU at 20, and I want to say NCCU at 16 or 17.
Yeah,
and I'm like, I'm taking NCCU over Montana right now. With Davius Richard. If Dave, okay, he's hurt. Yeah. If Davius Richards 100% healthy and we got a neutral site game, Montana don't know what to do with him right now.
And you know what? We can make the stands right here, man. We just got to go get some sponsors, some donors, man, whatever, and make it the Blue Blood Kickoff Classic. Let's get some of these games put together. You know what I mean? Let's, instead of the Swag MEAC Challenge, let's add something else to it. Let's cross it up just to see. So we see those cross FCS matchups, and put to bed some of these thoughts about not being able to match up and that type of thing.
Yeah,
that don't mean send us to North Dakota State either, but you know what I mean.
Coach said, "Listen, we ain't going up to the Dome. You can meet us halfway. We'll play somewhere like in Tennessee or something like that. We'll
somewhere like that.
Yeah, I mean, because here's my thing: is like, yes, you could say that maybe Montana wins some of those matchups, but is Montana beating anybody in the top 20 right now? I'm not picking them.
I mean,
based on how they've looked, I mean, they just lost. Okay, I get it, because everyone's saying it's a tough thing to go on the road and win, which it is. I'm not taking away from that.
No matter where you're at.
But is Northern Arizona beating anybody else? Maybe if you played all top 20 teams, maybe there'd be 1 to 2 upsets, maybe, just because anything can happen on a Saturday. But if you're an elite top 20, top 15 team, you're not losing that game.
No. I think because at that point, you've established yourself, and I think you have the people to back that up. You know what I mean? So you can lose 1 or 2 guys up front, and then you replace them with quality guys, and they're still not going to miss a beat. I think in this situation, I don't know if, kind of like we talk, teams change every year. How much of the carryover from what they lost into this year was brought over with them? You know what I mean? With the people that they lost, the team, the whole nine. It's a different team, which goes back to my argument, man. We should start after week 3, or to at least everybody's done playing their up games.
I will say this, this weekend was a perfect example of why I hate college football fans that use the transitive property in ranking teams. Because, coach, Utah Tech lost to Montana 2 weeks ago. Utah Tech went to Northern Arizona and beat Northern Arizona, and then Northern Arizona just beat Montana. So anybody who thinks your team is better than X team because they lost to the Y team and then Z beat both, so they're probably or lost to both, so they're probably better than T. Like that's not how this works. Like anything. So I hate people who use the transitive property in rankings too. Like common opponents only goes so far.
Oh yeah, um, because it's any given time, man. Any given time, man.
Yeah, and I agree with Timothy. Every single voter, coaches poll, media poll should have to release their ballots.
With a picture right next to him.
Everyone, because listen, I'm not going to throw this SID under the bus. And I want to say the conference, but I can't because there's only like 2 per conference. Okay, there's 3 conferences that don't participate in the playoffs. One of the SIDs from the 3 conferences that don't participate in the playoffs released their ballot. It was the worst ballot I've ever seen. Montana was above Western Carolina. You had like UC Davis still in there. I mean, it was just bananas what I saw, and I'm like, what are we doing here? So just want to throw that out there. But coach, 2 big CAA games. You had New Hampshire, Delaware. Coach, this is where you tied me for the records, man. You picked the Delaware upset. They pull it off 29-25. And then you also got Villanova beating Rhode Island 35-9. This was my upset pick. They embarrassed me this weekend with this one. Coach, in both of these games, we'll combine them together to get through this. Can you see either of these teams? Did either of these teams establish themselves as true CAA championship contenders with their performance this weekend?
I think Delaware, man, rolling the 3-1. You go look at their stat line. I think they can catch late season fire here going forward. I know we had some questions about them early. Can't say that all those questions are answered, but the quarterback situation, I think he played solid, threw the ball a lot, protected the football, got help in the run game. And, he had a favorite target that went crazy as well this past weekend. Like 5 catches over 100 yards. You put that in perspective, man. 5 catches over 100 yards. Those are big time plays. And I think if they can catch late season fire, man, I think Delaware has an opportunity.
Listen, Delaware proved me wrong. I had a lot of questions about Ryan O'Connor at quarterback. Hey, I didn't see this the first 3 weeks of the season, and he came out here balling, like you said. I mean, 336, 3 touchdowns. You mentioned him and Townsend's connection was ridiculous. But coach, the big storyline for me is I kind of listen. Their run game is what it is. Marcus Yarns has run for over 100 yards, and I think every game this season. I mean, it had another big game, but the defense was shocking for Delaware. They had so many new pieces. Coach, coming in, New Hampshire was just doing whatever they wanted offensively, only allowed 51 rushing yards. And I still don't understand why New Hampshire only ran the ball 14 times. But regardless of the point, they shut that down. And I mean, Dylan Lobby came into this game leading one of the leaders in rushing and receiving. He had 8 yards rushing on 8 carries and 7 catches for 24 yards. Not the performance we thought we were going to get from him. So you have to give Delaware's defense some credit, man. Listen, Jackson Taylor, outstanding game. We know what Chase McGowan can do. Khalil Dawsey had a ridiculous game on Saturday. So you got to. I'm with you. I think Delaware, with the way their schedule's laid out, with not having to play William and Mary, they're probably they play Duquesne this next weekend, coach. North Carolina A&T, Hampton, Townsend, Elon, Campbell, and then they got the big matchup with Villanova. Outside of Villanova, they're probably 10 plus point favorites in a lot of those games. I mean, there's a chance that Delaware finishes the season winning out after this one. This was arguably their toughest test still left on the schedule, and they passed with flying colors.
So do you think just because the kid at UNH, I wonder if there was something, wrong, if they were trying to, not put him up in those type of situations, because he's normally at a very high usage rate for them, and not to have him like that, maybe he's not 100%, but nonetheless, hats off to Delaware. And like you said, they could end it, maybe one more, maybe another loss, but I mean, they have an opportunity, and everything else that's coming up, they have an opportunity to be favored, or a small point spread, underdog.
If they win out, they got a chance to be a seed, like Dustin says. I mean, a 6, 7, 8 seed possibly if they win out.
And all you want to do is get in, right?
Hey, and you get that bye week and get home field advantage. I'm taking that every day. And their biggest test is going to be Villanova. They looked impressive. I mean, coach, 287 on the ground, 5 rushing touchdowns to quarterback. Came out here, threw for 166, a touchdown, and or threw for 166, had 3 rushing touchdowns, 113 rushing yards. They were just dominant on both sides of the football. Rhode Island had no answer for Villanova on either side of the football. Brendan Bell had a big game, so it was a big win for the Wildcats. And that Delaware Villanova game could be huge in determining, which of these teams are really, because I think William and Mary has not looked. I would say defensively they look elite. Offensively they look beatable. So I think that game could determine which one of these teams are like a true threat to knock off William and Mary.
And the Villanova game could have been worse. They had over 100 yards worth of penalties. I think they had a score call back as well. So that's something that they've got to get fixed going forward. But I think this sent a message to a lot of teams that they are trying to put it together, and that they're for real. So that matchup coming up, like you said, could be a situation where Villanova puts a stamp on it, or William and Mary says, "Nah, we ain't gone yet." That kind of thing. Something. So it's going to be a pretty mid-season, late-season run going on here in FCS, man.
The final 2 games, Coach, where we get into our winners and losers and final takeaways. 2 top 10 matchups. One looked like a top 10 matchup. The other did not, as Montana State beat Weber State 40-0. Coach, I mean, it's weird because to me, the top 3 in the FCS are so tight. When you got South Dakota State, North Dakota State, Montana State, any one of those has a resume to be number 1 in the rankings. But man, Montana State really impressed me. I mean, no Tommy Millott. And they come out here and coach, without missing a beat.
Yards of offense.
I mean, 346 on the ground, another 8 yards per carry, and 4 rushing touchdowns. I mean, I still, it doesn't matter that that they're coming, because you're not going to be able to stop their rushing attack.
And they're not going to change it up as far as, we're going to try to do this. No, this is what we do, and this is how we're going to do it. And it's just going to be one of those things where we're going to try to pound you into submission. And, I think they did it. I think the missing part of them was probably their third down, but I think that has a lot to do with who they had missing. But at that, at the rate they were moving, it wasn't anything that, hindered them. Hell, they put up 40, and they were 5 of 12. So you get that guy back, and your defense continues to play where they're playing. It's going to be a pretty good late season matchup coming down the pipe.
Coach, 5'18", averaged 8 yards per play as an offense, and defensively just absolutely dominated Weber State. I mean, held them to 200 yards of total offense and 3 yards per play. Hell, I mean, they were terrible on third down too. 3 of 17, 2 for 6 on fourth down attempts, and they only allowed 1 red zone trip for Weber State. I mean, they sacked Colin Wesser 4 times, and they held Damon Bateson, who came in as one of the leading rushers in the country, to 36 yards on 14 attempts, only 2.6 yards per carry, and held the team to under 3 yards per carry as well.
And it don't get any better than that. And like you said, their guy wasn't present. So, with their next 2 matchups, who do they have?
Let's see who Montana State. Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let me pull up their schedule. I want to say that the next two games are going to be favored a lot. Yeah, Portland State and Cal Poly is good.
So they get 100% healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Not to say that those games aren't something that they need to be worried about, but
They're not.
uh, stranger things have happened.
Yeah.
But uh, now you get another week, possibly another week, to get back 100% healthy for your stretch run. It makes these guys scary.
I agree because after those two games, Coach, they have back-to-back road trips: Sacramento State and Idaho.
And yeah, so we won't talk about that till they get there.
Yeah,
But that's going to be a heck of a run right there, man.
hey, we're gonna find out. Listen, the Big Sky is just a brutal conference. But Coach, so last game, Idaho getting the big win over Sacramento State. I mean, what else can be said about Giovanni McCoy, man? I mean, just continues to ball out as a true sophomore. 15 of 21, 234, two touchdowns, and I mean, Hayden Hatton continues to prove it. 7 for 72, and Idaho finds a way to win it. I mean, this game was a lot closer. Listen, they hit a game-winning field goal to really and truly. There was one last play, and Sacramento State ends up fumbling it, and Idaho returns it for a touchdown. So they get 36-27, but really and truly that a lot closer than that. Coach, what was your big takeaway from the Vandals?
They held the ball for almost 40 minutes, man. Almost 40 minutes. And the game is only 60 minutes long. They gave themselves the opportunity to win this thing, and they held on to it, like you said. But I think their game plan that they brought in for this, with this ball control, masterful. I mean, you had the ball for almost 40 minutes. The game is only 60 minutes long. Think about that. And then you've been preaching the praise of the guy that's leading Idaho from months ago, and he's just continued to keep it steady. Again, hats off to that guy and Idaho. And like I said, man, they caught Sac, I think, at a good time, and they took advantage of it.
I will say, I think I was most impressed about Idaho's ability to control the line of scrimmage, especially defensively. I mean, they didn't really have any like standouts in terms of box score, but like when you go watch this game, they controlled the line of scrimmage. I mean, this was a Sac State team that has run the ball consistently
On
with
everybody.
with the scrambling quarterback as well. And Caden Bennett, he can run. They hold them to 69 total yards rushing, 2.4 yards per carry, and that was their weakness coming into the year. Everyone was high on the Idaho secondary. Nobody really knew what they were going to bring edge rusher wise, linebacker wise. They had to replace multiple starters. They came out here and were dominant in the front seven. And so you're looking at this team now in terms of a makeup. They got the quarterback. We know to be a championship team, you got to have the signal caller. You have the running back in Anthony Woods, 117, 5 yards per carry. You have elite wide receivers. And now your defense is kind of starting to build some chemistry, build some momentum. Coach, I know there were some people questioning whether Idaho could live up to the hype that they had in the preseason. When I look at this team, it's built like a championship contender, in my opinion.
Yeah, and so far so good as far as handling that. And I think me and you talk about it all the time. A lot of teams that have the preseason hype and had all the glitz and glamour around their program, how would they fare once everything got rolling and you got past these money games and things like that? And this was the big, the first big test, I think, for them, so to speak, and for them to handle it, man. Again, when you just kind of pop open the box score, like you said, the thing that jumps out is that they had the ball for almost 40 minutes. And this is something that the team that they played usually does to other teams. Let's just be honest, Sac really pushed Stanford around. So I understood what you said when you were saying you didn't know how Idaho would be able to hold up front versus Sac. But I guess they showed you and me, but we did pick them.
Yeah, we did.
Again, I'm just impressed with their signal caller, man. And now you get this win. You're no longer sneaking up on people. Not that you were before, but you're definitely not sneaking up on people now. So people are going to start really preparing for them. So now we'll see where they are as a team, and if they have that mentality of being a championship ball club and doing what's needed.
Yeah, I like that one, man. And so to wrap us up here, Coach, biggest winner, biggest loser of Week 4 across the FCS.
Biggest winner, man. We're gonna stay right here with this game, just because I think what SAC did the previous week versus a Power 5, I think put a spotlight on them, and for Idaho to come in and say, "Hey, we're not scared of you. We go toe to toe." I think they're the biggest winner from that situation. I think the biggest loser, and it's one game we didn't talk about, but we talked about it last week a little bit, was Morgan State's offense, man. Their defense came again, brought the pain, played up to the living, to all the hype of the defense, and still fell short in 2 overtimes. I won't say biggest loser, but my heart goes out to those kids because I know those kids are playing lights out. It's a team game, no doubt about it. But again, I put them in that category.
I had there's a coach. He coaches Division II. This is how he put it to me. He said after that game, he's concerned that there's going to be some furniture moving in the locker room at some point.
Yeah.
I mean, because Coach, I mean, we've everyone who has ever played has been there.
Yes,
on either side of the football.
We've all been in that locker room.
When the offense is putting up 600, but the defense is giving up 7, or you're holding teams to 10 points, but your offense is averaging 6 points. I mean, like we've all been there, and it builds. Let's be honest, because we're talking about 18 to 23-year-old kids. It builds. Emotions run high. Everyone's hyped up on adrenaline, testosterone. Like, man, it's got to be frustrating because what you're looking at Morgan right now. If their offense, like we said, is Coach, I'm not even going to say top 50. If their offense is top 75, they're probably undefeated right now with an FBS win.
Realistically, undefeated.
Yeah.
Realistically,
yeah, undefeated. That's not even projecting. Like, I mean, it's not even a question. They beat Akron, they beat U Albany, they beat Townsend. I mean, it's got to hurt. I'm with you. That's a good one. I wasn't going to go there, but that is a really good one. I'll say my winner. I'm gonna say I'll go 2. I'll say Delaware, just because it set themselves up to be a seed in the playoffs, and I think they have a clear path now to get back to the playoffs after kind of I wouldn't say a down year. I mean, they were in the playoffs last year, but that team was never going to compete at the highest level. They look like a team now that could possibly get a seed and make a small run. That's back to the Delaware we're expecting to see, especially with all the talk of them going FBS. I think you don't want to be a Kennesaw State and be moving to the FBS right when you're going on the downturn. You need to start building some momentum. So I'm going to go Delaware. It was a huge win for them this weekend. I want to give a shout out, an honorable mention, Coach, North Carolina Central. I want to say it is not for the reason you're thinking. Listen, they beat Valley. We're not going to give them the biggest winner of the week because of that. Coach, backup quarterback, first start ever, Lucas Oil Stadium. Walker Harris, their coach, his nickname is Walker Texas Ranger. That is what they're calling him on the campus at North Carolina Central. Listen, Walker Texas Ranger put up 263, 5 touchdowns, 0 turnovers in his first career start.
I like it.
I mean, I get it, guys, because I already know what the coach. I get what the comments are going to say.
Because I was about to say, wait, what?
Yeah, listen, I know what the comments are still going to say now that I've explained it. Listen. That's huge for confidence. And if you go back and watch the film, Coach, this is so bad because quarterbacking around the MEAC and even the SWAC is not very good right now. There's an argument he's probably a top 8 quarterback right now.
And he's a backup.
Yeah, listen, I'm going to give them a winner just because there's a huge question of what's going to happen after Davius leaves. Yep. That kid right now might be the second best quarterback in the MEAC.
I'll rock with you.
Just go watch the film. Listen, I know. Listen, look, there's already comments. It's still Valley. I'm not saying it's because it's Valley. Go watch the film. The kid's got the listen. You can tell on film, regardless of the competition, the kid can ball out. I think NCCU is not going to take a huge step back. He's a lot different than Davius, though. Yeah,
I'll watch that one by the end of the week.
He's not a scrambling quarterback. He's a pocket passer, but the kid's got an arm. The kid is a gunslinger. Listen, Walker Texas Ranger, even with his name, that's a good nickname because the kid is just a gunslinger out there. But the biggest loser, man, Coach, I'll be honest, I bounced this one around because I wanted to go Southeastern Louisiana because, man, 0-4 now. You lose to Houston Christian at home.
There was
It's
so
like,
much hype around the program.
oh, it's bad. But I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna give it to Weber State. I understand that they faced I listen, Montana's the elite of the elite this year, but you didn't even look competitive. I mean, not even close. Like, you didn't pinch them. You don't know what number the quarterback was wearing. You don't know. Like, there was no coach. There's a clip Montana State dropped on the final run with Julius Davis. They're on the road, right? He gets outside. There's nobody out there with him in terms of him running. He blows a kiss to the student section on the field during the play as he's running.
I gotta go check that one. I gotta check that one.
The disrespect's on a million with that, by the way. But I love the energy. But
no doubt about it.
That's how it was, Coach. This was the top 10 matchup. Is Weber going to be good? I still think they're probably a playoff team at large bid, but that game proved that there is still a long way to go before Weber State ever has a shot to get to the national championship or be a true contender in the Big Sky. I think. I mean, they didn't like you cannot lose that game 40-0 at home. Montana State coming in without one of their starting quarterbacks. That's a game that you have to be more competitive in. So I'm gonna go Weber State for the loser there. And then my final one, as Coach steps out real quick, is SWAC refs. We talked about it earlier, giving Bethune-Cookman 5 timeouts in the second half. And I mean, like I said earlier, it could have cost Jackson State the game with the way they called that game. They missed a big catch for Bethune-Cookman. They had multiple missed calls at PV and Alcorn State. It's just been a trend over the past years about how bad reffing has been in the SWAC. So we got to get that fixed. That's my final loser. Coach, I think you're muted.
I'm with you because that official thing, again, when you're talking about wanting to be legitimate, that takes a big thing with it. That's a big part of it. If you're wanting to put your product on TV every week, it's got to be right from the players, the coaches, to the people that are on the field with them. If you want people to continue to watch and continue to buy into to your conference, I think that's one of those things that's got to be addressed, and I think that helps the conference when it is.
Coach, let me ask you something real quick. This will be our last thing. We'll run out of here. I know you got to go. Have you ever seen a team have more of an injury bug on special teams?
Say that again. I'm sorry, B.
I said, have you ever seen a team have more injuries on special teams than that? I mean, they had no kicker, no punter. The long snapper was the punter. The kicker was a soccer player.
That's true. So my SWA is in here. It's funny. She walks in when we're talking about that because she had a video sent to her, and she's literally going crazy about that kick or whatever. But as I told her, hey, it doesn't matter. Calm down. It's not going to change. It will never be said that we were wrong. So no need in your blood pressure going through the roof. But back to what you were saying, that's one of those situations where you look around and you're like, did that just happen? Like, we got to reassess some things.
I just want to know how it happened. Like, the day before the game, how does your punter and kicker, like, are they running Oklahoma drills with the specialists? Like, how does that even happen?
Hey, and then you go back and you look and you're like, wait a minute, what are we doing on our Friday walkthroughs? Because obviously this ain't working. We got to go back to meeting in the gym or in the parking lot or something just to ensure that nobody gets hurt, nobody's moving around too fast, too quick.
Man, okay, so apparently the kicker's been hurt. The punter was the one that got hurt. But listen, man, I'm hoping. Listen, I am hoping they get healthy because that is just outright. No one cares. Oh, y'all have like 6 punters this offseason, so maybe you guys will be okay. But I mean, Man, I can't deal like that. I've never heard that. Listen, I've covered college football for a while now. I have never ever. I mean, what Vandy that one year had the soccer player
Yeah, had the
kicker, but
tryouts in
yeah,
I think Texas Tech, but I think he did it because he was upset with his kickers at the moment. But I don't think it was ever that.
yeah. Hey, but listen, that's all in good fun, man. Shout out to her though for coming in there. Hey, caused a fumble on one of the kickoffs because she kicked it real short and the dude just missed it, and they set Jackson up for a touchdown. But guys, we're gonna get out of here, man. Coach has to get back to work. We appreciate y'all tuning in. Week 4 recap. Me and Coach will be back 4:30 on Thursday for the Week 5 preview. A lot of big games to talk about. But guys, for Coach Fred, for myself, and for the Blue Bloods, man, we are out for right now.